hidden industry that's generating billions of dollars a year, which has been exposed in a new documentary. Shadow Scholars follows an Oxford professor as she travels to Nairobi to meet some of the highly educated Kenyans earning a living by writing essays for students here in the UK and around the world. Have a look.
There are 40,000 people in Nairobi alone, who's doing this. Who are those people? Those are humans, right? That's like, what's their story? How did they even get to do this?
Supposing you try logging in the accounts in Kenya, they shut it down. The moment you use the VPN, your location is shifted. After which now it's safe to log into the account and work from there. No one can actually tell that you're not in the country.
Well, I'm joined here in the studio by Oxford professor Patricia Kingori. You saw her there in the piece, and Eloise King, the director of the Shadow Scholars. Thank you both for joining us here on the programme. This is an extraordinary documentary that exposes this whole other world. But it took 3.5 years. Just talk us through the trust that you had to build with these students and the people on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first and foremost, it was just an industry that had never really been looked at in detail. And so when we went to Kenya for the first time, for the film specifically, Patricia and I were really keen that they understood what our agenda was. And that was to understand more about the industry, but also find a space in which there was to celebrate the immense amount of talent. And so over the 3.5 years of filming, we would hold regular town halls for like 2 hours where we said, come out, ask us questions about things that are concerning you, things that you're worried about, anything that is a problem that's arising, and like, let's see if we can work on this together. So it was a real sort of collaborative effort in an attempt to tell a story that hadn't been told before.
Yeah, and a real journey, because Patricia, you've been researching this issue for some time. I mean, you are a professor at Oxford. Why did this issue come to your attention?
It came to my attention really first in the form of numbers. So I found out about the numbers of people who were doing this in Nairobi, but it was clear that there really wasn't much research on who are these people. It just seemed to me really extraordinary that we could count roughly how many there were, and we knew the percentage of people in Kenya who were doing this work. But actually, like, what's it like to write a PhD for someone? You know, what is it like to write multiple PhDs for some people living out in the world? For me, that was the thing I felt really needed to come to the fore, to really hear those voices.
What are the numbers?
Well, they estimate, it's difficult to pinpoint because then the market shrinks and expands according to what students need. But when we were filming, they estimated from really around 40 to 50,000 at any one time just in Nairobi. And we know that obviously it's other parts of Kenya as well. So it's huge numbers. I mean, we're talking about $1 billion industry.
And that's, I mean, it's not just the numbers that we're talking about and the fact that it is $1 billion industry. I guess the question is, you know, they trusted you to tell their story. They are making money from this. Why did they want to talk? Because it does expose them in many ways and it could impact business.
I think there are a couple of things, like Professor Patricia Kingori and I, ahead of going, shared profiles of ourselves and said, would you be willing to meet with us? And so the point at which we met with the first groups of writers, they had researched us, they'd looked up Patricia's sort of track record and also mine. And I think that was a real move towards agency. And they said, you know, like, we know what you've done, we understand the work, this might be something that's possible. So I think that was the first phase. And then over time, it's really a case as a filmmaker of proving that what you say is true, that we're not going to put anything out without your consent. We're going to keep being in a dialogue with you about this. And the reason that they were willing to talk about the industry is that I think they felt maligned. And I think that a lot of people can understand the ways in which the Global South has been incorrectly positioned as being a space of only needing aid or support, when actually they really understood within themselves that not only did they love education, but that they were supporting education to other people around the world.
I mean, and not just supporting education, as you say, writing multiple PhDs, you know, one person writing for, a number of students around the world here in the UK is quite something when you sort of think about it.
It's crazy. I mean, really, the analogy that I've used before, it's equivalent to sort of you and I feeling really good that we kind of go out regularly to the gym or for a jog, and then going to an Olympic village and seeing people really sort of athletes. You know, it's that difference. You know, what's it like? I just couldn't get my head around the psychology of it, and to actually see them, and an essay would come in on a subject they knew nothing about, and to have to turn that around in 4 hours, 5 hours.
And they're researching from scratch.
Completely.
And the thing is, they're having this build-up of knowledge, right? So the fact that they're doing this time and time again, so writers that we featured in the film, one of them, Moses, you could literally see on his desktop how many times he delivered. So he's written over 1,000 essays. And so actually it's not just about going from scratch. There was a database, there was a knowledge base that they are working from, and that's why they're so good at what they do.
It's almost like a ChatGPT type,
yeah,
it's all
like, before
in.
there's ChatGPT, there really were the shadow scholars.
Talk us through the fake ID situation, because many of them have had to change their identities and their names. It goes back to what you're talking about, the feeling maligned in the Global South. You have to have a Western name to be seen and recognised.
Yeah.
Shall I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think, they've very quickly realised that if they presented themselves to the world as themselves, they just wouldn't get any business. Because people just don't believe that this thing is happening in Kenya. So they have to adopt identities, they have to change their VPN to present themselves as being in a US town or in a UK town or somewhere in Australia in order to get that work.
So hang on, they don't actually, the people who ask them to write these don't know that they're in Kenya?
No.
No, which is such a big part of the shadow and the masking of where the skill and the talent are coming from.
Western names, but people knew they were doing it out of Kenya.
So often what happens is there are websites who act as conduits, so the middlemen. They will host the bids for the student. So the student says, I need this piece of work. The writers will then bid on it. But what they were finding was that, one, their IP addresses were being blocked if they were coming from Africa and Kenya specifically, and also that they just weren't getting volumes of work at all or being selected if they were using black pictures with their real names. And so they adopted white faces and white names, in order to just make themselves more viable within a market that was doubly sort of prejudiced against them.
Patricia, what are you hoping comes out of this documentary now that there is this awareness about this billion-dollar industry that exists? What are you hoping it sort of shines a light on?
I think that this documentary will shine a light on the possibility that maybe the way that we think the world works isn't quite how it works. There are people out there who are really talented, and if they had the opportunity, we would have a different world. And I think for me, shining a light on this work, I think, allows us to see these really intelligent Kenyans as just in need of opportunity.
Because even knowing this, it still doesn't mean that they have the power, really.
Absolutely not. And I think one of the things is that Patricia really adeptly explores in the film is the way in which power makes things feel invisible, that this is the way that they're supposed to be. And actually, we know that the writers have this talent, and so it will take people in power, people with jobs, like policy, legislation, recognising that maybe you can have research centres that are based in Kenya where they can directly be doing the work without having to have this conduit, but also that they can access universities in the global north without having to do it on behalf of someone else, because they're already in these spaces, they're already doing the work, and the talent is undeniably there.
Eloise King, Professor Kingori, thank you both for joining.